We're going to kick it off with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, Sully, how are you?
Pretty good, man. Sorry, no intro music for you. Nick's a little tied up there.
That's all right. We'll give him a pass just for this week.
We'll have to find some kind of 80s pop music for you next week.
Possibly. It'll be interesting to see what he comes up with.
Some Billy Joel or something.
Yeah, there you go.
So what's going on, man? Opening night of high school basketball season last night. Some exciting games. We're starting to already see some players to watch for sure.
Yeah, I was out last night at St. Joe watching St. Joe host Atlantic City, and kind of a surprising score there. St. Joe, Marcellus Ross scores 38 points, and St. Joe wins 87-42, really dominates an Atlantic City team. Kind of a statement win for St. Joe. Probably easily the biggest regular season win since Paul Rodeo took over that program 4 or 5 years ago. And, Atlantic City, a perennial power, but obviously graduating 4 starters, kind of in a little bit of a rebuilding mode, but still surprising to see St. Joe jump on them like they did last night.
Yeah, and the Gene Allen saga kind of all came to a resolution before the season started here. And did you get a chance to speak to him at all?
Yeah, I talked to him after the game, and obviously what, happened there this week, on Monday, Judge Blee reinstates Gene Allen as the head coach until further order of the court. And then on Tuesday, the Board of Education meets and votes basically not to appeal that decision. So Gene Allen will be in place for the 2018-19 season. He said that, after the game last night, we have a story on pressofac.com and in the paper, not in the paper today, just made the online version, so you have to go to pressofac.com right there to read about it. That the turmoil, over his status was a bit of a distraction, but he gave credit to St. Joe for just forcing some turnovers there. And unfortunately, the game there was a scuffle broke out in the fourth quarter. I think Atlantic City had 2 players ejected. St. Joe had 3 players ejected.
Wow.
So, we'll see how that plays out over the next couple of days as far as suspensions and everything else.
Yeah, I'm sure there was some frustration on the part of some of those players that, Atlantic City's not used to being dominated like that.
Yeah, kind of a hard foul there, with St. Joe up 40-something points and midway through the fourth quarter. So, obviously, those situations are going to happen. The officials quickly restored order. There were no punches thrown or anything else, just some pushing and shoving and yelling. Order quickly restored by the officials, and we'll see what the ramifications are, as far as maybe some players being suspended or not for 2 games in the next day or so, because both teams play Sunday at Ocean City PBA tip-off weekend. St. Joe plays Central Jersey Power Ewing, and Atlantic City plays Ocean City, both on Sunday.
Now, Mike, this Ross kid, I remember getting a quick glance at him 2 years ago when he was a sophomore, and the first impression is, man, this kid can really score. He's one of those kids that just knows how to get the ball to the basket and has a variety of moves, can hit a lot of threes, can also drive to the basket. Really a talented kid.
Yeah, and it was interesting last night. He enters the season with 1,488 career points, but he had 38 last night, but only 2 in the first quarter. So he got off to a little bit of a slow start. And Coach Rodeo said after the game that maybe Ross is now a senior. Maybe as a sophomore or as a junior, he's kind of gets a little frustrated because he only gets 2 points early in the game, and maybe doesn't go on to have that sort of great sort of effort that he had last night, but he was able to stay patient, trust the game, contribute in other ways. And then he got going in that second quarter. I think St. Joe went on a 15-1 run, the last, the second half of the second quarter to really turn a 1-point lead into a 14 or 15-point lead. And I think Ross had 10 of the 15 points during that run. I think he had 7 foul shots and then, banged a 3-pointer to sort of finish out the surge. And that really, put the game away for the Wildcats right there.
Now, Mike, I was at Atlantic City's MLK school last night to watch Mainland girls versus Atlantic City, and Kylie Watson picks up her 1,000th point in the first game of her junior year, which is quite an accomplishment, especially in girls basketball. To be able to be that good your first 2 years, to have 1,000 points. And what a great kid. Nobody deserves it more than she does. She works so hard in the off season, and she's really, developed her game a lot from last year. They have a much different lineup than they did last year. It's basically her and 4 guards. So they're kind of running a different type of offense, and it's neat to be able to see her development from year to year.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see, I kind of wrote about this earlier this week. Again, in the Press of Atlantic City and on pressofac.com, you can probably still get the story there. Is I think you're going to see a more dominant Watson, Watson that's more willing to put her will on impose her will on the basketball game. Obviously, Mainland graduated the 4 senior starters. And, look, I don't care how talented you are as a player. It's tough as a 14-year-old or 15-year-old freshman, sophomore to come in and just sort of assert yourself, on a team that's, mostly 17, 18-year-old upperclassmen. Now she's a junior. These are the girls that she grew up playing with in middle school, travel basketball, all those sort of things. So this is really kind of her team now. And I think she had 31 points last night.
Yep.
Mainland beats a good Atlantic City team by double digits. That's a very good win for Mainland because, Atlantic City, I think we have them number 11, our Elite 11. They've got a host of talented players back, and they've got a big game tomorrow at Ocean City, PBA tip-off weekend against Ocean City. So I think what you're going to see and what you saw last night is a Kylie Watson who's a more dominant figure, and I think it really is her team now where, obviously a very talented player, with the upperclassmen, maybe she was a big part of the team the past 2 seasons. Now there's no question. It's her team. These are the girls she grew up with. The younger girls kind of look up to her now. She's the leader of Mainland Regional. I think you're going to see a lot more games like you saw last night. And I think you're really going to see Kylie. It seems strange for somebody who's represented the United States of America, played for the under-16 national team. But I think you're really going to see Watson, really at her best, the next 2 seasons.
And we're talking with Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. And, Mike, one of the things that really strikes me about her is just her personality. And there's always little kids coming up to her, and they're starry-eyed. They see this big, tall star basketball player, and she's always quick with a hug or a high five, and she'll never deny an interview to anybody, any kind of media outlet. Just what a great young lady and student, and really an ambassador for South Jersey basketball.
Yeah, and anybody that wants to see her today, I feel like I'm doing an advertisement for this Ocean City PBA tip-off weekend, but I think Mainland's over there this afternoon against Rancocas Valley, so you can see her play. What I tell people all the time, and it really is true, the outstanding high school athletes that I've been, lucky enough to interview over the years, they're not knuckleheads, or stereotypical, the stereotypical image of the jock who cares nothing about sports. 99.9% of the outstanding high school athletes I've covered are mature beyond their years. It's like when you're talking to a 17 or 18-year-old or 16-year-old standout high school athlete, it's like talking to somebody who's 24, 25, 26 years old. I always tell people, people ask me, what was it like to interview Mike Trout? I say, when he was 17 years old, it was like talking to a 30-year-old man. Yeah. Kylie Watson is similar in that way. You don't get the sense that you're talking to a 16, 17-year-old, high school junior. You feel like you're talking to somebody who's 25, 26 years old. And that's a big part of their success, that maturity, that ability to just sort of handle things and just be comfortable in their own skin. And Kylie certainly has all of that.
I barely spoke to my mom when I was 15 years old.
Really?
Much less reporters.
There you go. Exactly.
Mike, plenty of other outstanding athletes on the basketball courts in South Jersey, and Nick and I were talking about a couple of them down at Wildwood Catholic. Nick was the play-by-play guy for the radio broadcast there last night, and man, these kids down there at Wildwood Catholic, you got Taj Sweet, Jaleel White, and even Jacob Hoppings down there. What a team they have down there. I don't know if I'm sure there's going to be teams that can compete with them in the Cal, but this is they're looking like a number 1 team at this point right now.
Yeah, we have them actually number 3 in our Elite 11.
Number
right
3?
Behind,
come on, man.
Yeah, number 3. Well, Haddonfield, defending state champion, returns all their starters, and of course Camden sort of loaded for bear at number 2, but obviously Wildwood Catholic right there. And you don't see really 2 Division I players Rare to see that on the same team. You've got that in Taj Feet and Jalea White. And you mentioned the other guys on the team. Jacob Hopping, much improved from last season. The kid McGonigal at guard, much improved from last season. And Wildwood Catholic sort of opens up with a 20-point win over Holy Spirit, kind of living up to that preseason hype. I just think Wildwood Catholic is so tough defensively. I think last night's game was, in that tiny gym was 80, maybe 88, 68, something along those lines. But Wildwood Catholic, with their length, is just going to give teams all sorts of fits defensively.
Hey, Mike, I'll give you a girl to keep an eye on. Sanai Macon over Atlantic City. I'm not sure what grade she's in, maybe a sophomore, junior, but, man, this little girl can play some ball. You can tell she's one of those girls that grew up playing on the playground against boys. She's got some moves. She can shoot from the outside, drive, and she's one of these kids that always looking to just drive to the basket and showed no fear against Mainland, and she's going to be fun to watch. They got some pretty fun players to watch over there at Atlantic City.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, as I mentioned before, we had them at number 11 in our preseason Elite 11. Sienna Howard is back. Sienna Red Howard is back. A bunch of other girls are back, a team that went to the Cape Atlantic League semifinals last year. I think last night, obviously I wasn't there, but I read our story in the Press of Atlantic City, and you were there. I think they fell behind early, maybe got a little overwhelmed, made a late run, and fell just kind of short. Mainland hangs on to win by double digits. I'd be really interested in seeing how that Mainland, how the Atlantic City Ocean City game unfolds tomorrow. Ocean City comes off a win over Millville last night. They're obviously the two-time defending South Jersey Group 3 champions. They bring back a lot of people, including their point guard Danielle Donahue. Tori Rolls back. So that's an interesting game to see how Atlantic City bounces back from that situation. I mean, not too many teams are going to start off with Atlantic City's schedule. You get Mainland Regional on Friday night and Ocean City on Sunday. Maybe you're looking for a WNBA team on Tuesday, to sort of play after that. So, Atlantic City, doesn't get a chance to ease into the season there. Jason Lance and his girls.
I'll tell you what, Mainland, though, it's not just Kylie Watson. They got some pretty good players as well. Taylor Dalzell and the freshman Cameron Dirks really looks like a star in waiting. I mean, she's only 14 years old, but got a lot of varsity experience with soccer this fall, and almost looks like a player that's 2 years beyond what her age is.
Yeah, she's another player that's going to be an impact freshman that people have talked about. You mentioned Taylor Dalzell. They also have Claudia Marone.
Yep.
And Marone and Dalzell almost perfectly complement Watson because if defenses collapse on Watson, Watson is an unselfish player. She can kick it out to Dalzell and Marone, who can both hit the perimeter three-point shot. And that's just going to make Mainland even that tougher to defend because teams just cannot focus solely on Watson. So, again, that's what I'm talking about. This Mainland team almost kind of perfectly complements what Watson does well. So that's why, I think Mainland's going to have a very, another big season despite the graduation of 4 starters from last season's team.
It was funny. I was talking to Coach Jason Lance of Atlantic City after the game, and I asked him, how do you go about defending Kylie Watson? He's like, you do what you can.
Yeah, I mean,
because when she does drive, she can dish out to 2 3-point shooters. So it's kind of pick your poison.
That's what I mean. You can't. You almost have to sort of collapse on Watson and hope the other players don't make their perimeter shots because if those perimeter shots are falling, Mainland is going to be very tough to beat.
Mike, what's on your radar for this week coming up? I know we got a big weekend with some of these showcase events. Have you looked forward yet into the midweek games? Anything we should be looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think towards the end of the week, you've got, Ocean City and the Mainland girls, kind of keep the theme going of this little interview we're having here. They played 4 times. They played 4 times last year, twice in the regular season, once in the Cape Atlantic League championship game, once in the South Jersey
couple overtime games.
Couple of overtime games. Mainland wins 3 of them. The 2 regular season games in the CAL title game, and Ocean City wins the South Jersey Group 3 championship game. So they'll meet again for the first time this season on Friday. And then you've got the Christmas tournaments starting up on Saturday with the Boardwalk Basketball Classic starting off. And you mentioned that Wildwood Catholic boys team. They're playing some outstanding teams in that down at Boardwalk Hall. I think they play Marist and North Jersey Power on Saturday, and then during Christmas week, I think they've got Camden and Archbishop Carroll of Philadelphia there. So, obviously some great basketball coming up, before the new year. High school basketball picks up over Christmas, where a lot of other industries and sports kind of wind down. High school basketball is at its peak over the Christmas season.
Great stuff as always, Mike. We appreciate the time, and plenty more basketball to talk about the next couple of months. So keep your notebook filled, and we'll be picking your brain about some of the top athletes and teams in South Jersey.
Absolutely, Sully. Enjoy it, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks for having me for a few minutes.
You got it, man. Have a good weekend.